everybody, and welcome back to the Hilltop Pillbox here in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada, and we're on spring break. So a little bit of time. Yesterday I had to go in and get some new headshots in Vancouver. That was a good time.
I'm too sexy for my love.
And I'm just getting older, but that's okay. Hopefully I'll book a big movie you can all go watch someday. Ha! That probably won't happen, but hey, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Done some TV, done some film, and it's a good fun diversion from the everyday grind. Now, here we have some more fun coming at you in the form of 1914, the Axis and Allies World War I offering. And we're going to have a good time here. A couple of things that we're going to point out. First of all, we're going to point out these handy dandy markers. Yes, these are acrylic flag markers from Historical Board Gaming. And if you look at them, they're nice and thick and just a different shape, right? So when the Italians come up here and take Smyrna, right, that really sends a statement, right? That's a no-doubter, right? So we really like that. They're not really that much larger. In fact, they're a little narrower than the average roundel, but they are a little wider. So pick your poison. But I really like them, and you can pick them up. I think they're like 80 cents a piece or something at historicalboardgaming.com. So go ahead and pick some of those up. Over here, though, we're going to show you Italy. That's why I was using the Italian stuff. We're going to use the Hilltop Italian rule here that I came up with about 3 years ago. And it's caught on with some people, I know. Other people are more purists and just go out of box, which is fine. But with the Italian rule, they have to actually roll a number to get into the war. Ostensibly a 1 on turn 1, and a 2 on turn 2, and 3 or less on turn 3, 4 or less on turn 4. And if they do that, they can then enter the war. Until that time, they can't leave their borders. The ships can't move. And they only collect $7 per round. So it's not like they're building up a monster force behind here in safety. That's half the force. So they are not on a war footing, just doing basic stuff, and they will not grow into a monster. But if they wait until turn 6, that's going to be about $35, $42 they've spent on things while everybody else has been killing each other. So it can turn out well, and it has in a couple times that they've actually gone and taken Vienna. So it is possible. Italy can also not be attacked in that time. So it's complete peace. No one can take their money, and they just tool up for war, sometimes very slowly. Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Some other neat things we're going to tell you about here are the great army and build plates here. We'll show you the Germans. So there's the build plate, where obviously you put your build. You get your money and put your build there. You can see what's coming. And then, of course, we've got our task forces, where when you build up your army, it's too big to fit inside some of these small zones, especially off in France. Those get pretty small, and if you've got French, British, and Germans in there, well, you just slap that in there, and it's much simpler, much easier to take a look at. So, very handy. I love these things. And these are all acrylic. There's no cardboard here. They're really solid things. They're going to bury us all. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you, we're not playing the Russian Revolution rule. And we're also going to play low luck. Now, low luck, I've done a video on low luck, probably 3-4 years ago on how low luck works. But as a quick refresher, for those of you who don't know, we'll do a little border dispute with, say, the Ukraine and Galicia here. And so, essentially, for every pip that you attack with, right, you divide it by 6. And that answer, that whole number, will give you how many auto hits you get, and then you roll the remainder. So for the Austro-Hungarians here, they've got 6 guys there, and they're all rolling at a 2, of course. And you got the artillery shooting at a 3, and they upgrade 2 infantry up to a 3 as well. So we're going to have 4 infantry attacking at a 2. So that's 8. And then we're going to have 4 infantry/artillery total attacking at a 3. So that's 12. All right, so that's 20. So we're going to have 20 on here. Now, divide that by 6. You got 3 with 2 remainder. Okay, so we have 3 with 2 remainder, which means there's 3 that are auto going to die. And then we roll a die. If we get a 1 or a 2, we didn't, there would have been a 4th hit. So the Russians are going to lose 3. And then the Russians here have 6, 7, 8, all shooting back at a 3. That's 24. Divide that by 6, that's 4 auto hits. So 3 Russians will die, 4 Austro-Hungarians will die. And there's no, of course, there's no leftover. 24 divided by 6. So it's a very balanced system. Typically, when you do low luck, the best strategist wins. That's why I like using it, because then I find out if my strategy is out to lunch and I get absolutely destroyed. Because sometimes we'll come up with a strategy that we figure is just aces, and it wins. Oh, it's great, I'll use that every time, and the next time you try it, you lose. Well, that's because maybe the dice didn't work out well, or maybe they were much better than they should have been on that low luck, or the non-low luck game. So we're going to do low luck. We're going to see what happens here. Now, typically, this game is favored to the Allies. The longer it goes on, the more the Allies tend to do well. So I'm going to tell you what the goal of this game is right now. And the goal is this. Germany is going to take Paris. Okay, that is the goal. So they're going to do everything they can to take Paris and essentially not care two wits about the Russians. Okay? Now, the first attack will likely depend on what I do with the Russians. Russians tend to back out of here, though, because you just can't withstand this, right? You're just going to get destroyed. And so they tend to back up into Belarus, depending on how the Austro-Hungarian push into Ukraine went. If it actually happens. Sometimes you you wait a turn. So depending on what's going on here, the Germans will likely put a huge stack in Poland, and it's a real stopper for the Russians trying to move westward. Meanwhile, they are going to send everything they've got, and the Austro-Hungarians are going to help. They're going to send everything they can into France. So this will go well as long as Italy's out of the war. Meanwhile, the Germans have got to subdue the Royal Navy. If they can get rid of the Royal Navy, then it is only France fighting Germany and Austria-Hungary, which is going to probably work out pretty well for the Central Powers. Again, it's low luck, so you're not going to have any battles where you wipe out 40 units or anything silly like that because the dice get hot. But mathematically, the Germans definitely have the edge. The Ottoman, well, they're going to be kind of on their own this game, hopefully trying to withstand the British, and we'll see how that goes. Oh, and with low luck, we still do the strafing run of the aircraft coming through, so that's not low luck at all. You don't need 6 fighters to get 1 hit, so you still roll that out. Alright, so that is everything. Oh, and the mines. You also roll mines. So, alright, so that is everything, and we're going to go on, see what turn 1 gives us, and we'll see, well, in a little bit, whether or not this Schlieffen Plan Part 2 works. Round 2 is about to begin, and we're going to let you know what went on here in round 1. Pretty typical stuff. As we know, the Germans move in because the Russians have to back off or be destroyed in detail. So they backed off. The Austro-Hungarians had come into Romania pretty big, and they were able to wipe out the Romanians. Of course, when you are playing low luck, you know exactly what you need. There's 6 units, so they need 6 hits, which means they need 36 hit points. So you can bring exactly that much. Same with Serbia. You can bring enough to get the 4 points you need to destroy all the Serbians. And you also get some losses on your side, but if you know you're going to take the territory, it's something you can actually plan for. The Austro-Hungarians bulked up Galicia a little bit. Ukraine is loaded up with all the Russians. Down here, of course, the Ottoman Empire seized Bulgaria for a sweet 3 and some extra units, and decided to send some stuff over here to the east to stop the British. Now, the British could not take Persia. They didn't have enough stuff because they needed to have 24 points worth of hits, and they had 20. So the decision was made up at high command to load up for bear, but in the meanwhile take Afghanistan. And the Afghanistanis rolled and obviously got a hit because that's what they do. Tough nuts to crack. And they got a hit on the Brits as they're coming in. So this is what we're left with in the eastern side. Now Africa is getting thinned out much more quickly now because typically you might not get a hit or two here and there, but now if you got a man and an artillery, you're guaranteed one hit. So the British were able to do that in Portuguese East Africa. The Germans rolled a hit as well, and as you know, you can't leave artillery alone, so they had to lose an artillery, which leaves the Germans with the only artillery in the southern part of the Dark Continent. And we have a little bit of trading of different pieces of real estate. Of course, the Germans with the Gold Coast. Now, this is the strategy I employ now to essentially get rid of the Germans as quickly as possible. I send a couple of French transports down here and take care of the German threat as quickly as possible. Of course, with 3 infantry, they're able to kill 1 German infantry, and there's no guarantee they'd lose one. So that's a little bit better of a trade-off. More of a sure thing when you play low luck in that sense. Up here, all quiet on the Western Front. I think not, but the Germans have punched through Holland and Belgium and did so quite convincingly and have some decent stacks here in Alsace-Lorraine. Well, the French are in Lorraine, and they have most of their military might there. Now, as the low luck goes, this is going to be a tough slug for the Germans, but they are dedicated to sending everything westwards and head to the Parisian frontier, pardon me. The British, got to tell you about the Jutland, because the Jutland happened, and it wasn't really there, it was in Season 9. The mines were devastating. I started laughing out loud. So there's 4 subs, so I rolled 4 dice, 1 at a time. 3 of them got 1s, so 3 subs down, there's 1 left. Then killed a cruiser, and then damaged the battleship. It was unbelievable. And they still destroyed the British fleet, but the British fleet exacted their revenge. And so now the British brought over their cruiser and a transport from Canada and built 2 more transports, and will start loading up France proper. And the French are sending up, just in case the Germans decide to put some money into boats. But I don't think that's a good idea in this game. I think it's a little bit of a losing proposition trying to compete with the British on the water and the French on the land. I don't think that's very wise. The math just doesn't add up. And that's pretty much it. A little standoff across the Suez. And everything else is pretty status quo. So we'll let you know how turn 2 goes. What's going to be happening here? This is a very interesting conundrum, because the Austro-Hungarians don't have enough to take Ukraine. I think they don't even have enough to kill all of Sevastopol, because there are 9 units there, and I don't think they've got 54 worth of hitting power here. So it will be interesting to see, but of course you can always chip away in this game and just get that stream of reinforcements helping out. Italy rolled a 4, so they're not in the war, which is good for the Austro-Hungarians, because they're leaving this wide open. This is so wide open, in the hopes of keeping the Russians at bay long enough to be able to help. You can see the Austro-Hungarians are here in Munich. They'll be heading into Alsace to help bulk up the Germans a bit. All right, round 3, round 2. Coming up. Let's see what happens. Well, round 2 was pretty exciting. We're going to start over here in Russia, and the Germans have a small probe moving forward here because the Russians, well, they went down south, and they had enough stuff to almost wipe out all the Austro-Hungarians. They lost a lot of stuff doing it. I think they lost 12 or 14 units themselves, but Austria-Hungary once again is having to back up. I don't know. Comment below. Do you ever have success with Austria-Hungary? In my games, whether it's low luck or just regular dice, Ukraine is their cemetery. It's a mass graveyard for Austria-Hungary every single time. So they have bulked up over on this side, pulling guys this way, thinking that, we should be okay here. And of course, Russia sold out, right? They sent everybody here. Now, the Germans didn't pull forward, because had they pulled forward, they would have likely been trapped. They really don't have an awful lot of stuff here, less than 20 units. So They probably wouldn't have been able to last long, and you can see there's no follow-up because everything is headed the other direction. We'll get over there in a minute. Down here, the Russians came into Romania and scooped the $3 and then defended Romania with one guy and actually took out one of the Turks as they came in. So Ottomans have taken it over and have a fairly healthy economy sitting at 25 right now. They also went into Sevastopol with a lone infantry unit. Obviously not going to last, but there it is. Over here, the British were able to take Persia for the loss of 1 or 2. Let's see, 2. So they lost 2 infantry going in to the 4 Persian units. And so now you're going to have a bit of a standoff between Britain and the Ottomans, as we tend to have each game. Now, the British also have Arabia and have enough stuff in Egypt to hold against any sort of incursion by the Ottomans. Plus they're mobile, right? They've got the boats, so they can land behind enemy lines here, and that's something that sometimes gets the Ottomans in trouble. Down here, we see the British have been able to wrest control of most of the German holdings, and the Germans have been eradicated everywhere except in the Union of South Africa, where they do have 2 units. Any attack will destroy either one of these. So likely go for this side, although there's a lot of French stuff. Probably go for this side now that I think about it, because they'll kill that. They may lose the artillery, but Britain only has 1 unit there, so they'd likely stick around a little longer. On this side, the French, there's just too many of them with these boats. I really like this strategy. Let me know if you use this or use something else as well in this. Now, something I neglected to do in the first round or two was to get Portugal, and by the time I noticed it, I don't know where my head was at. It was a little late. So now we've set up to take it next turn. I noticed it because France is down to 22. That's even taking these ones here. And typically they're still flush at this point. I went, I forgot to take Portugal. So, got to do that. And you get a free 4 units out of it as well. And over here on the Western Front, the Germans came through and clobbered the French units that were there. Had a decent battling going on because they had the airplane, so the artillery was shooting at a 4. But the French decided to retreat, to bring up some troops from Paris and make a stand in Picardy, and smartly left 1 guy behind because the Germans cannot leave. They have to kill that guy or retreat, and of course they're not going to retreat. The British landed here, killed a couple of German units in Picardy, and now are sitting there with 7 units. And the Germans are down to 5 infantry in Belgium. But they are moving a bunch of stuff forward, as are the Austro-Hungarians. But the Austro-Hungarians are going to have to be careful because, yeah, you guessed it, Italy is at war. They rolled a 2. So they are at war, collected 14 on their turn, but couldn't get any more. Going to try to liberate that this turn. And, it'll really depend on what Austria-Hungary does. So Austria-Hungary could attack here and likely do some damage. Won't kill all 12 units, just don't have enough. But they'd lose a lot of stuff too. So, as you can see, for every 2 units, defending at a 3, you'd kill something in there. So there's 12 units, so that's 6 units that the Austro-Hungarians would lose. And it looks like they would inflict 5 or 6 casualties themselves on the Italians. Not really running the numbers right now, but they do have a plane that can help boost that score. So, should these guys come back? There are 12 infantry and 4 artillery. Should they come back, or should they continue to push towards Paris? Well, I've said they're going to push towards Paris, so that's what they're going to do. We also have a very large stack of Italians back here. Right, we got 16 infantry and 2 artillery. So if they head into Picardy, I think that might be curtains for any sort of a design on Paris with low luck. That'll be interesting. It will be interesting. But I think that might not work out too well. As you know, the Americans just continue to collect money. So I just collect money with the Americans. I don't build anything. And we do it all on the next round. And then in they go. Now, I know some people bring them in on turn 3, just so that the American player isn't bored. But since it's just me, well, I'm not bored. Plus, it might help the Central Powers, delaying the Americans 1 round coming in. All right. well, that is the story. So we've got a healthy Ottoman at 25. We've got a very weakened Russia now. They're at 14. And is it 14? 2, 4, 6, 12, 13, 14. Yes, they're at 14. So very weak. Doing pretty healthy here. The Brits are doing quite well. Austria-Hungary is not as strong as they'd like to be at this point in the game. They typically still have control of Romania, but they've lost that. So the money is going a little further south than perhaps the Central Powers would appreciate at this time. Italy's in the war, and it'll be interesting to see how this works out. All right, turn 3 coming up. Round 3 is done, and the whole world's at war. Well, America's in it, but they haven't done anything yet. Over here in Russia, the Russians are staying alive. They haven't folded very much under the pressure here, and they have absolutely liberated Ukraine and have held Tatarstan, but Sevastopol and Romania still remain in Ottoman hands, but the Austro-Hungarians are backed off completely now and are outside of Russian territory and not likely to head in there anytime soon. However, the Germans still have a decent bulk of stuff here, but the Russians now outnumber the foreigners on their own soil, so we might see a resurgent Russia here. Down here, the Ottomans are also doing quite well, actually. They've got a lot of stuff and no real natural enemies going on, just the Brits here, who can only build 5 per turn in India, as per the house rule. Yeah, they got some stuff in Arabia. They had the Syrian desert and Smyrna. They had just a lone infantryman jumped up there. He got squashed, of course, and didn't take anything with him on the way out the door. So the Brits they're in defensive posture here. Not a lot of push going on. The Ottoman, though, they have to be careful about trying to push out. The British do have a fighter here and tons of artillery, so they're going to really put a beat down on the Ottomans one of these days, but probably not anytime soon. The Ottomans have about 20 units sitting in there, and 20 times 6, of course, is 180, and we do not have 180 worth of attack there. Not even remotely close. Down in Africa, well, you got your lone German infantryman remaining. That is it. He is on his own and surrounded by the enemy. Probably going, well, we don't know he's going to die this round, of course. We've got the first attack will come from here. Actually, he will die this round because we can pick Buddy up, bring him by. So yeah, he's going to have an auto kill, and then we'll see if he can get some sort of a reprisal in his swan song. Italy is now at war, folks. Italy has moved into Albania and taken that. They rolled a 2, as we know, at the end of last turn, so they got their money. Unfortunately, the Austro-Hungarians anticipated that and decided to move their stuff forward and came into Venice, had a big slugfest, killed most of what the Italians had there in Venice. So they backed up, left one behind to stall a little bit. And we're going to talk about stalling in just a second. And then built a fighter, just because if you can win that fighter duel, your artillery can really bring the harm. 3 artillery, it's 12, it can get 2 hits, 2 auto hits. So that's nice. Now, I was talking about stalling, and yeah, it's one of those brain fart things that happens every now and again. Remember last turn I said I left a Frenchman in Lorraine so that the Germans wouldn't be able to just go into Burgundy. Well, of course, the Austro-Hungarians were in Alsace and did the beloved can opener on the poor Frenchman, allowing the Germans to thrust through into Burgundy, which honestly didn't go that well for them. The initial attack was not too bad, but the French did have a counter with their Parisian units and brought the Germans down to 2 units total. That's all they have left now, mainly because, you see, the Italians came in and beat down another 5 of them, so they just have 2 units left. So Germany's a spent force here in Central. Up here they still got some good stuff, and they'll probably be surging forward here, trying to take out what's this British Expeditionary Force. The French finally liberated Portugal. Yay! And with America in the war, next round, we tool up. So just a little hint here. If you just save your money with America, when you get to the turn 3 purchase, you can purchase 6 transports, 4 artillery. That costs 52 bucks. And then you are set. You still got $8 left over, which gives you 28 for the following round. You can see my money there. All right, so that's what I tend to do. I know it's a little scripted, and I really don't like scripted, but this is the fastest way to get units from America into the war in decent amount of power. Now, you could load up with nothing but infantry, save yourself $4. Excuse me, that would give you another 12, which would allow you to buy another boat and 2 more infantry. So I could have more infantry going in, but I do like having that punch. All right, so they're going to be heading over here and likely go to Spanish Morocco and hope they don't get hit. And then they're here and they can start landing in Albania, Greece, and threaten the Ottomans. So that's why the Ottomans can't just start frivolously doing attacks this way, because they're going to need every boot on the ground they can get. And we've seen this before. But it really comes down to what happens here. It looks like the Allies have been able to work together. Now, there's 3 of them here. But there are 2 Axis, pardon me, oh, bad word, Central Power nations here. So, 3 on 2. Yeah. It's a good tilt, though. It's a good game. And we shall see what round 4 brings us. The Russians look like they have a little bit of breathing room. But again, the Germans have no interest in trying to defend 2 different territories and letting the Russians swing behind them. So that's why they got the bottleneck going on here. Austro-Hungarians are here, although they are definitely going to have to bring these guys over because the Germans outnumber them. And even if they bring them over, there's a good chance the Germans will smash into Romania, possibly Galicia, just to prove a point here. All right, round 4 is coming up. It's already got that feeling that the the Entente, our Triple Alliance, are doing what they need to do to win. But we shall see if low luck can actually pay off. All right, here we go. Round 4 is done. Round 5 right around the corner. Here is the Eastern Front. Not much of a change from last round, except for Russia is very resurgent here. Just had the numbers, came in and put the boots to the Ottomans, kicked out everybody, and now they actually collected their wage. They're still down 3 in Poland, but up 3 in Romania, so they're doing okay. Down here, the standoff continues, although the Brits may have the horses now to probably whittle down the Ottoman. Faster than the Ottoman will be able to replenish. Again, more of a standoff here. This is pretty typical for this game. Of course, the German died thanks to all the French help down there. So the Germans are well and truly gone from the mysterious continent of Africa. They're gone. Italy, pushing out a little bit into Serbia, and you can see the Austro-Hungarians are really up against it now because they've got the Russians in full voice here, and they've got the Italians lurking in the south. Budapest is wide open. So that could be a problem. Up in the north, they were able to take Venice. The Italians counterattacked, knowing that they couldn't destroy them, but just to whittle them down and give them more problems. Mission accomplished. Up here, the British forced a landing in Holland and suffered no casualties because there was nobody there. And the mines were impotent here for the Germans. So all 6 units landed. Now 6 units doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 3 auto kills on anything that attacks it. And so that's not a lot of fun for the Germans to attack, to lose 3 units that are trying to get into Paris. But if we look here, we now have the assembly line here of troops headed down, and Paris is now under siege a little bit. Now, the British are gone from the continent. That's why they landed up in Holland. And the reason that worked is you can see the Austro-Hungarian marker in Lorraine. They went up and they beat up the British. and the Germans came in and finished them off. And you can see that the Germans have about 20 units, the Austro-Hungarians have 8, and the French in Paris right now have about 20 units. And Austria-Hungary goes first, then the Germans go. So it is possible for Paris to fall this round. I'm not sure they actually have enough to kill all those units, but Paris could be under siege and constantly under siege, and that's $6 for the French, and that's a lot of cheddar, as they say. Well, in France, it's a lot of camembert or something. I'm not sure. But off to the races are the Americans, and they have landed their 12 units here, and they can of course land anywhere in the Mediterranean this next turn, except the Ottoman holdings here. But why would you, just to get squashed? So likely going to come over, land in Albania, and really threaten Vienna. Now the thing for the Central Powers is if they lose one capital, it's typically curtains, unless of course they've been able to capture Moscow or Paris. Don't know if they're going to be able to capture them, but we'll keep playing and we will let you know. It's not looking good right now for the Central Powers. The Austro-Hungarians are really under the gun here, under a lot of guns, a lot of Russian guns. The Germans may have to abandon we're just going to hold the line here, and they may have to go on the offensive. They really don't want to, but they may have to. So we shall see what they decide to do, because again, no follow-up, because if they do a follow-up to this side, then we've seen it happen, where as soon as you get a break, as soon as you get a pause in this line headed towards Paris, that's it. The Allies are able to survive and start to push back, and then it's just a waiting game at that point. So we will keep you posted. The Ottomans have regrouped back in Constantinople because of the threat of the large pile of Russians, and the Italians were coming, and the Americans are coming. So they do have to do that. They'll be moving out again, but they did need to contract a little bit. Bulgaria will likely fall to the Russians here. I'm not sure how much I'm going to put in there. I might put the whole stack in there, but once the Russians are gone, there's no follow-up. So again, it's all about being able to get stuff over to your enemy's capital in a steady stream. Well, there's a few streams going on here, and they are steady. But we'll see, maybe these British are going to be able to interrupt the show for the Central Powers. Time will tell. Round 5 coming up. Turn 5 is done, and we had, or have, no less than 4 capitals with a little bit of trouble. Possibly 5 capitals. We'll show you why. So the Germans decided, nuts to this, we're going to move in. If anything, to get some more money, but also to make the Russians possibly turn around a little bit. Now, the Russians went first, and when did they ever? They went into Galicia and are putting direct pressure on Vienna, and they can do it too, right? They've got, in here, they've got 16 hits they can apply to Vienna. And Vienna, right now, only has 10 units. Now, of course, they can move stuff back and they can build, but still, that's a pretty formidable force. The other thing the Russians could do is move into Silesia, and I'm glad I actually didn't even notice that when I moved into Galicia. They can move into Silesia, and now they're next door to Berlin. So what I had to do was do a slight interruption and put some tanks here and the German build, which could deal some good damage to them. Although, again, 16 hits. That's a lot of hits. So I'm not sure what to do with the Russians right now, because I don't want to waste them, because this is all they got. This is all they got. They got a couple guys down here, and then they've got the home front. But that's all they got, and I don't want to throw it away. So I'm going to have to do some real mental math on that one. Down here, the Ottoman had to retreat. The British were able to come in with just far too many guns blazing and really beat them. And so they retreated back, but joined up with some decent forces from Constantinople. And the Mesopotamian area may have been lost, but they did save their army. Over here, the French have been able to bring up a few boys up from Africa, and The British also brought up a couple of guys from Africa now that the African campaign is over. The Americans landed in Albania here with 12 units, which is going to be handy because the Italians attacked Trieste, and I knew we couldn't win, but I thought, hey, maybe if we could just keep Austria-Hungary from collecting that $4, that could be something. But they need 4 hits. The Austro-Hungarians, with the stuff that's in there right now, can get 3 hits. So they only need 6 more pips worth of damage to take out the Italians and collect that $4, which they can, of course, get from Venice. Venice, of course, fell, and the Italians lost their fighter, didn't rebuild, and now have scant forces here on the Italian peninsula. So you can see that Austria-Hungary is in some pretty dire straits, and they always seem to be. I don't know if the designers knew that this is what was going to happen in almost every single game I play. And maybe I need to play this with other people and see some different strategies going on, because Austria-Hungary just seems to take it in the teeth every game. And at the beginning they look pretty good. They take Serbia, take Romania. The Ottoman are here protecting their southern flank. Russia's already on its heels. You know, they're losing Poland, and yet for some reason they just can't keep it going. Over here, of course, the Austro-Hungarians went into Paris first and only caused 4 hits, and they lost all of theirs. But then the Germans followed it up and smacked down the French quite a bit. The French were down to about 6 units, I think. And then the Italians came in and beat up the Germans. So it was like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But Paris never actually fell, but it is contested now. So they're not collecting the $6. The French only collected 19 last turn. British were able to land another expeditionary force here and have tooled up to have a bit of a repeat next round. But the steady stream of German reinforcements does seem to be working. They can put more stuff into Paris than the Parisians can, and the Brits can, and they can put more stuff in than can be destroyed. So they are killing more than they're losing each round, and there's a steady stream of it. So not really sure. Maybe the Americans should have gone north, but I figure we can probably take out Vienna here. And I keep saying we. This is just me playing, but I'm just talking on the side of the Allies here. Pretty sure we can take Vienna here with the Russians, Americans, Italians working together. And time will tell on that. But I kind of worked out the math in my head, and it's going to be... Vienna's going to be hard-pressed to stick around in 2 turns. In 2 turns, it should likely be in American hands, probably. All right. Well, there you got it. You got the whole picture now of what's going on. And a little American backup here with a fighter. Why not? If they can get an American fighter on the continent, sometimes that can spell doom for their opponents. But once again, kind of looking like the Triple Entente or the Triple Alliance are going to win this game. We're only in round 6 that we're about to start here. And it's looking pretty dire for the Austro-Hungarians and the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire collected 16 this turn. They lost Romania and Bulgaria. Were able to take Bulgaria back. Just a lone Russian in there. But now Mesopotamia is no longer contested, actually. They've moved out, again, to save their army. But that's just 3 more bucks they will be missing. And probably won't get back anytime soon. All right, on to round 6, and we'll see. Maybe these Americans will head on down to Turkey and try to finish off Constantinople first. But I think this is the real prize. Find out if I think that later on this turn. Half a dozen turns in, and things are getting pretty spicy. So the Germans came over here, took Livonia with a decent amount of force last round, but then the Russians were able to go and pick up the rest of the territory and likely can dispatch the Germans this turn. So, frustrating. Well, Vienna is under siege. and it's not looking really good. Now, the Russians actually split up their forces. They put some into Silesia and some up here into, what's that called? Bohemia, and into Budapest, and were able to score quite a payday. In fact, they ended up with $35 last round. So I think Moscow is off the table for the time being, and Vienna is definitely in some trouble. As you can see, the Americans are over here now and have 9 units in Trieste that can go into Vienna, and the Russians here, of course, have got their, what do they got now? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They got 25 units that can go in. So the Austro-Hungarians collected $23 last turn, so they'll be able to build 7 units. But the Germans can come in and save the day, which they probably will do here, and that'll keep Vienna out of the Triple Alliance's hands for now. Down in the south, the Ottoman went into Bulgaria and took that from the Russians, who had decided to bespoil the land with their imperialistic boots. And so the Ottomans decided to go in there with force. There was a debate at the Ottoman War Council whether or not to go into Serbia, because we knew the Americans were going to go in there and scoop too. But those $2 the Americans are going to get aren't going to be on the battlefield for a few turns, and that's one less American that can go into Vienna. So, and they can kill them this next turn if they want. Austro-Hungarians obviously really only have one choice, and that's to go back, take Budapest, get that $6 back. Over here, the Ottomans have decided to coagulate their forces here in the Syrian desert. Everything they've got is there that's not in the capital, in Bulgaria. And it is more than what the British have, by quite a bit. So they can't really do an attack, and also, again, I mean, these British forces are going to hop the canal and get over into there. So there is no real chance for the Turks to hang on to their empire. It's going to be a slow death here in the land of low luck. Italians were able to kick the Austro-Hungarians out of Piedmont and move their guys up. Oh, we didn't put their build on. They just had $16, so they built 2 artillery, 2 men, and saved 2. Over here in France, now we're using these because there's just too much stuff. So we got the French Empire has that in Paris. The Italians have that in Paris, 8 guys. And the Germans have that much in Paris, and the Brits have 6 units in Paris. It just was too crowded. So yes, go buy these things. These things are awesome. And that's where we are. The American big transport fleet is headed back, all 6 boats. And yeah, we got a couple more guys over here. And that's pretty much all there is to tell. So it looks as though Moscow is safe. Looks as though Vienna will likely be saved. Constantinople won't be hurt for a while. And Paris, that's a real interesting situation. But I think unless the Germans are able to get more stuff into France all at once, and I don't see it happening, especially if the Austro-Hungarians have to keep troops back here. I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe. But the Germans may save Vienna well enough that the Austro-Hungarians can then start to threaten Rome again directly. Alright, so round 7 coming up. The game, oh boy, it's so weird. It looks like there's some momentum and then it's taken away. But low luck continues to be the law of the land, and we'll see if that balance is there, if this goes on indefinitely, or is something got to give. We'll find out. Alright, well, the game continues on. Here we are at turn 8, and at the start of turn 8, this is what it looks like. Germans have had to retreat a little bit because the Russians had a ton of money last turn, and I mistakenly said that the Austro-Hungarians had 23. They actually had quite a bit more. They had 38. I thought the 25 chip was a 10 chip, so that's what kind of messed us up. But anyway, yeah, they had $38, and so they built a lot, but they did build a lot. Didn't last, though. We're going to talk about that in a second. But here's the Russians. quite powerful now. Going to sweep aside the northern Germans. A bit of a bigger stack here. That's a bit of a concern. Down in the south, the Austro-Hungarians and the Russians have a bit of a standoff going there. And the Ottoman Turks have, again, kept things in Constantinople, but moved out enough to take Ankara back. A lone Brit had gone in there. As you know, Mesopotamia had been vacated. But the Ottomans have been busy. They went and almost were able to eliminate the Brits out of Transjordan. Came down to a die roll and they missed. So the British do have that. But that's a lot of Ottomans that may actually go on a stroll in Africa. Not sure if that would be a good idea or not, but it is definitely an option. And if we look over here, we can see in the Austro-Hungarian capital of Vienna, there has been some blood spilt this turn, folks. I'm here to tell you. The Russians went in there and put the hammer down on the Austro-Hungarians, and the Austro-Hungarians lost a lot of units. They were able to build quite a bit. I think, what was it, like 12 units in there? And then the Germans came in and brought in 5 more units, which actually saved the day, because when the Americans came in, they were able to take out everything except for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Austro-Hungarian units. So that would have been it. That would have been curtains for the Austro-Hungarian Empire, I think, if they would have lost all their money and essentially all the units they have on the board, except for a couple of lone infantry. So the Germans saved the day for the Austro-Hungarians. Sorry for the bad camera work, folks. I'm just placing Italy's last build. We forgot to do that, but there it is. All right. The Italians, speaking of them, have been able to get control of all their former territories back and are also still hanging out a little bit in Paris with 8 units. Up in Paris, as we know, the Germans continue to march. Oh, I forgot to put the German build on. I've been trying to kind of move through these because this game is taking a lot longer than we thought. I don't know if you know, but this is day 2 of this. So yeah, the Germans had to send units in a different direction on the last round, and they ended up in Poland, as you can see. So while that's an impressive stack, the Russians have more and a fairly healthy economy, fairly robust. They'll be coming back, and the Germans have to keep this trail going. And the British, again, landing 6 units per turn on the continent, and the French are typically building 6 units. They're down to 19 now, 18, something like that for the French money. And the Germans took Burgundy just to lessen what the French are able to get. And yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, now had the Americans gone into Paris, that would have been it. There would have been no chance for Germany to take it. With low luck, it is over. But because the Americans came up here, there's a chance Paris can fall, and there's a chance that Vienna can fall. But there's also a chance they both can hold. So this is a very interesting game to me. Constantinople, I think, is very, very, very slowly dying on the vine. There are a lot of units in there, of course, 18 units, 19 with the artillery. And nobody can produce as much as they can in a turn down here, because the Brits, are, of course, as we know, are limited to 5 units. Having said that, the Turks are just tend to be getting a little weaker each turn. We shall see. And you see the Americans, of course, are in Budapest and Trieste. So they got 32 bucks this turn, and they should be able to put that to good use. Speaking of the Americans, they built 4 men and 4 artillery over here, and the fleet of 6 transports has been broken up, and they're going to come across. So that's another 8 units coming in, and likely going to come and try to put more pressure down here in the center of Europe. So that's turn 7, folks. And, turn 8, actually. I think we are on to turn 9 now. That's what it should read. On to turn 9, I think. Oh, my goodness. Amazing how the brain doesn't work sometimes. All right, here we go. On to the next turn. I'll figure out what turn we're on. All right, that was turn 8. Okay, so here we go. So turn 8 is done. and looking like an Entente victory coming up here. We're gonna show you, and essentially it's because of the 1-2, 1-2-3 punch that essentially the Central Powers cannot absorb. So the Russians have all their home territory back except for Poland, but they had Romania, so that balanced it out. So Russia is back to full strength and will likely go up even more. The Germans came down to Galicia, hoping to then hop into Vienna, but I think I'm going to smash them with these Russians, and while it won't kill all of them, it'll definitely hamper them and put them in a place that they cannot get out of except to go back to Silesia. The Russians will also take Poland at the same time, of course. Now down here, the little bit of a hot cold. The Ottoman came down here and they were able to take Transjordan, but then the Italians came across because the Ottoman pulled most of their troops back to Smyrna here because here come the Brits. And together, all of this Ottoman stuff can certainly stop that, if not outright destroy it next round. And may have to actually retreat those British units one space and just collect some more. These boats are proving invaluable right now as they are able to shuttle 4 units at a time up to Mesopotamia. So that will likely help them with their push towards Constantinople. The Americans dropped some more guys off in Albania here, some doughboys ready to go for it. So did the Italians. The French moved up into Trieste from Albania, and they will be heading into Vienna as well next turn. So Vienna is down to one dude. And they collected $17 last turn, so they are really, really hurting for certain. They're only going to put in 5, which means they have 6 units. Plus the Germans have 5 in there, so that's 11. So 11 hits are needed, which translates to 66 in attack value, and nobody has that. Plus, well, maybe in the aggregate they will, if the Russians can take care of Galicia and tie them up, which I think they'll be able to with the help of some air power for the Russians, which I always like to have a plane for the Russians because they tend to have some artillery floating around, and that extra pip certainly helps. Up here in the north, Germans building the status quo, not building too many tanks right now. They cost a little too much, and we need bodies down at the front. And the front, again, still looks like this, and it's just getting bulked up by everybody except for the Italians. Aren't putting anything else into that, although they did take Burgundy back from an empty German token. Marseille is in German hands, as was Bordeaux, but the French landed 3 units and landed 1 unit and brought the 2 down from, is that Brest up there? Yes, from Brest, and were able to get rid of the German, who did take out 1 French division on his way out the door. The Americans have a substantial follow-up here in 8 units, so they'll be landing in Albania next turn, which means 2 turns after that they'll be in Vienna. So not looking good for them. Now Constantinople can't lend any help. That is the problem. That is absolutely the problem. Vienna is on her own, and the Germans even cannot send any help down there if they ever want to hope to take Paris. So in Paris right now, the Germans have this stack here. So they have about 40 units in there, a little bit right around that area. But the British have this much in there. All right. So they have 8, 10, 12, 15, about 16 units. Okay. But the French, they've got a nice fat stack there in the 20s. And of course the 8 Italians. So essentially the Allies outnumber the Germans, and the French only collected, I think they only actually collected 14 last round, but they had saved 2. So they only have 16 to spend. The Brits are putting in 6 units per turn, infantry at this point, because it's defense, right? They're not thinking offense. And the Germans are bringing in next turn 6. So they'll be outnumbered by the Allies on the next build. But after that, they'll be doing all right. Now, there is a break here because they did have to send some units elsewhere on the last round. And actually, I think I may have made a mistake. Did I make a mistake? No, I didn't. The ones that would be in the Ruhr right now move 2 down, and they're in Galicia. Okay. That'd be bad if I made that big of an error in the game. Over here, the Americans have 4 boats ready to go, and they'll be headed over very shortly with an aircraft and some artillery, to say nothing of the infantry. All right. I think what's going to happen, though, is if Vienna does fall, we're going to call it. Because there's just no way that the Central Powers are going to be able to push out of the Ottoman Empire and withstand the Russian horde and punch through into Paris. It's math, right? So we're going to see what happens here in Vienna, if they can hold on with the German help they've gotten. And it's going to be close, though. I'm running the numbers. It's going to be close, but their economy is just so deflated right now, and they're relying on outside help, which is not on the way. If the Germans do come down here, yeah, they'll save Vienna, but they will never get into Paris. So they have to keep going towards Paris, and Vienna is kind of left to her own devices here. We'll see what happens here on round 9. All right, heading off to round 10 here, and it's one of those only a matter of time moments. It's just, there's no winning it for the Central Powers at this point. As we can see, the German reinforcements are all tied up here. They're likely going to have to start fighting for their own soil. Austria-Hungary is going to make $0 this turn. Yeah, $0. They have had everything taken from them, and there is no chance for them to get anything back. Right now, they have 4 of their own units, 4 infantry. The Germans have 1 infantry and 4 tanks. Good on offense, sucky on defense. And the Italians actually made $26 this round. 26. So when Italy's make it 26, they actually scooped a few bucks here from the Ottomans. That's a bad time. We're going to play one more round here, but I think it's pretty much curtains. I think the Germans are going to end up losing their expeditionary force here. And I do want to show you the neat SAR tank here that I picked up from Historical Board Gaming. Pardon the loud machinery outside. I'm getting a bunch of landscaping done at my place, and it's noisy and expensive. But the guys doing it are doing a great job. And so we'll be happy when it all looks good at the end of all things. All right, so heading over here, the British. Another expeditionary force. They don't seem to have any end of them. Landing in Belgium and taking that, and now interrupting the Germans yet again. And with substantial, I mean, they're going to cause 3 deaths for whoever attacks them. Of course, the Germans have a lot of stuff coming in. But then the British might just land again somewhere and continue to land in Picardy perhaps, because these Germans will likely head into Paris. Down here, the Americans landed their 8 units. The other 4 took Serbia from the lone Austro-Hungarian, who didn't get a hit. And the French here and the Italians will be moving into Vienna as well. So it's really looking like an Entente victory. The Turks have had to button up in Constantinople, as there are just all this British stuff coming towards them. Now they could bust out and cause a lot of damage, no doubt. But they just can't sustain it. That's their problem. And should America turn its eyes southward, which they will, after Vienna is fallen, Russia and America and Italy will all focus on Constantinople. It's just a numbers game, folks. That's what it's turning into here. And Paris, of course, there you go. Now, France doesn't make a lot of money. They only got 17 last round. But there's all those Frenchmen in there. You still got your happy 8 Italians strolling around in town. Decent amount of German materiel in town, but still just barely more than what the French have. And then, of course, the Brits have their contingent as well. So, being a numbers game, I think one more round will be very telling. And with Austria-Hungary only going to be placing, they got $14, only going to be placing 4 units. And the Russians can definitely take that out. There might be a couple of things left here. I'm going to have to start losing these German tanks, though. They just don't do well on defense. I was looking for an opportunity to do an attack. Never materialized. They would have all just been wiped out. So, even though they do absorb 1 hit, they would just get taken out by the sheer weight of what the Allies are bringing. All right, we are going to do one more round here, and we'll see what we see at the end of all things. See how Paris looks. Will it be as crowded? And that's all over, folks. We're going to pack this one up. Another victory for the Triple Alliance. We'll show you what we got here. So, the Ottoman, they only collected 9 this turn. They did have Bulgaria, but the Americans decided to come in. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, look at that stack of chips. You know, can't they do something? Well, yes and no. They can do something once, maybe twice, but after that, it's over, and they can't rebuild this. So their best defense is a good defense, if that makes any sense whatsoever. They're surrounded on all sides, and if they start pushing out from their capital, the capital will be exposed. And when you've got the Americans coming in with 4 boats, the Italians now have 3 transports, and they've got the money to load them up. They made 26 again this turn. So this is gone, by the way. This is gone. They just died in the American turn, and that's why I've decided to end the game. And that's all there is to it, folks. It's all surrounded. These Germans, they held out to the bitter end, but they're going to die this next turn. And then all this stuff here can just choose to move up or stay there or move south. Really, all of these units here are absolutely free to do what they want to do, right? So you've got all this stuff that has nothing to do but kill the Ottomans. And Germany's having its own troubles. You can see, though, Paris only has 2 of the 4 standards left. The Italians went screaming into the German lines and died, but they took 2 artillery with them. And the Brits are all dead. Now that's because the Germans decided to go on the offensive, and this is all they have left now after all of the battling. So even on the next turn, likely Germany will not survive. None of the French died in this big attack that the Germans did, and in fact they got stronger by another 5 units. So it's highly unlikely that this game could go anywhere but down the drain for the Central Powers. We have a good shuck going on from the States. A minimum of 2 transports per turn are coming over with stuff. It's usually 3 or 4, and that'll just continue on. So they'll be landing. It's essentially like having another, 2 Italys over here, because every turn we're landing 6 or 8 units. And that's actually more than Italy typically is able to produce. And you can look at all the U.S. flags here. They're the ones who have been benefiting as they basically come in after everybody's killed each other and stride in and plant the flag, and there you go. So it's the smart way to do war. So there you have it, folks. That's everything. Leave your comments below, and hopefully you enjoyed seeing these flags. I really like these markers. You see, I don't get a kickback or anything. I just really like these square ones. They don't have them for Russia. I'm hoping that they'll print them up someday so we can get them to match. They do have Russia, the red, white, and blue tricolor, but I wanted the ones that kind of match these tokens here. So there you go. Historical board gaming. There you go, Doug. Your next project, if you're listening. But thanks so much for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. As we always say here at the Hilltop Pillbox, hug your loved ones. Thank your friends for playing. And even when you're playing low luck, sometimes you gotta roll them. So may the dice be with you.